Entre tanta tristeza,
yo soy alegría. Entre tanta pobreza, yo soy bendición. Entre tanta religión, yo soy Cristo.
Entre tanto rencor,
Yo soy perdón.
entre tanta muerte, yo soy vida.
Nueva iglesia soy. Nueva iglesia. Nueva iglesia soy. Nueva iglesia soy.
nueva iglesia soy.
Nueva iglesia soy.
Bendeciré a Dios en todo tiempo, su alabanza en mi boca estará. En el Señor se gloriará mi alma, lo oirán los mansos, se alegrarán, engrandecer al Señor conmigo y exaltemos su nombre, porque Él es bueno, porque Él es grande. Le alabaré, le alabaré, le alabaré. Bendeciré a Dios en todo tiempo, su alabanza en mi boca estará. En el Señor se gloriará mi alma, lo oirán los mansos, se alegrarán, engrandecer al Señor conmigo y exaltemos su nombre, porque Él es bueno, porque Él es grande. Le alabaré, 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 le alabaré. Le alabaré, 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 te alabaré, te alabaré, te alabaré, te alabaré.
It always called my attention when I read the text of Revelations 12, the great sign in heaven, the woman who gives birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations, and the dragon. All of that story, this scatologic story, called my attention, especially that the moon appeared under the feet of this woman. The moon is the luminary of the night. The moon and the sun are the big luminaries. The sun for the day and the moon for the night. And in our concept of labor life, the day begins, it continues, and then night comes. That means that we were taught that first was the day and then the night. But it isn't. It's not like that. Because it's the afternoon and the morning. But it's not just the afternoon, not just like 1 p.m., 2 p.m., but it all starts with the darkness. Darkness is first, before light. First is the animal and then the spiritual. First is the Eden of the earth and then the Eden of heaven. First is the law and then the grace. First Moses, then Jesus. First is the darkness and then is the light. First is the luminary of the night and then is the luminary of the day. In the order of Chronos, in a time sequence. If we could graphic this way, of course there's symbols, typology. You remember, for example, that Joseph had a dream, and he said that he dreamt that the sun and the moon and 11 stars would bow in front of him, and well, that irritated all the family. And so Jacob says to Joseph, "You think that your mother and I and your brothers were all going to bow before you? They're just figures, typology." In that dream, Jacob was the sun for that dream, not for the interpretation or the hermeneutic, biblical hermeneutic. The moon was Joseph's mother. The stars are Joseph's brothers. They were 11. The context changes. There are some things that are kept and some things that are dynamic. If you just stick with one thing as your measuring rod, like a rule forever, then you're going to be confused. So it all depends on what we're talking about. I was saying that it called my attention to find the moon under her feet. And when I was studying about ancient religions and Asian cultures, well, there's everything to look at and scrutinize everything to see what it is that God has done and what has been done by man. And so in the Sumerian culture, there is a goddess. Among the pantheon of gods, there is a goddess who is called like a desert that you already know, one of the 7 deserts through which Israel passed. The desert of Sin, not Zin with a Z, but Sin with an S, which means shortage, scarcity. Somehow, many of the children of God, many of my brothers and friends, and myself, we've met the desert of shortage, of scarcity. It's familiar to us. And that desert has a mount, an interesting elevation. that desertic zone in honor of that goddess whose name is Sin. And there we find that mount, and is Mount Sinai. Yes, the mount of the goddess Sin, the mount of the goddess of scarcity, and the goddess of night, because her symbol is the moon. We're also going to find the god moon, Sennacherib, but we're not going to take a look at that. We'll study that another time. We'll come back to that. We're going to take a look at Sinai, the epistle of Paul the Apostle to the Galatians, chapter 4. I'm going to read from the verse 21st on. It's not like while I read, it's like commercials and you can stand up and go to the bathroom or take a call or check your phone. No, it's the most important part. I don't recommend you to do that while I'm talking, much less while I'm reading this document that I have right here, which is named as the Holy Bible. And it says, "Tell me, you who want to be under the law, are you not aware of what the law says? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the slave woman, and the other by the free woman. His son by the slave woman was born according to the flesh, but his son by the free woman was born as the result of a divine promise. The son of the slave was born first." I'm saying that, I'm not reading. "And the son of the free was born later, because first is the animal and then the spiritual." I'll continue reading. "These things are being taken figuratively. These women, Sarah and Agar, these women represent the two covenants, the Old Pact and the New Pact. One covenant is from Mount Sinai, and this pact, this mount, bears children who are to be slaves." That's what Agar means. Do you want to enter the kingdom of heaven through your good deeds? Because Agar, listen to this, Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. And that is the most saint mount of the Judaism. That was where God descended from heaven and wrote with his finger. I don't know with which finger. I don't know if he was right or left. He wrote on tablets of stone. I don't know in what language. Tablets which I don't know where they are. They lost them. And they were the most sacred that they had. I don't know in which language. I don't know which finger he used. I don't know where they are, but that's the story. It says that tablets of stone in Mount Sinai, in a mount that has its name after a goddess of the Sumerians, where Abraham was from, Chaldea, in Mesopotamia, all of which was Babylon in the future. But that was where Abraham was from, that was where he was with his father. Because Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and it corresponds to the current Jerusalem. And this one, together with her children, is in slavery. Who? the current Jerusalem. It's in slavery. The capital of Israel, the current Israel, terrestrial Israel. But the Jerusalem from above, there are two Jerusalems. The first one is the capital of the terrestrial Israel, one of the Israels. And the second one is the capital of the Israel that's celestial. And this book says that our citizenship is in heaven. And there's people who are still trying to find their roots with the terrestrial Israel. But the Jerusalem that is above, who is the mother of all of us, is free. And so, my brothers, just like Isaac, we are children of the promise. But just like it happened then, who was born according to the flesh, persecuted, belittled, mocked those who were born according to the Spirit. It's the same now. Judaism says to Christianism, you can just be the benigno. You don't have to follow the commandments of God because that's for us, the Jewish. But you can do the commitments that were given by God to Noah, sons of Noah. Imagine you are receiving the crumbs for the dogs. So, on a table that's under the table of the dogs. So, no, that would just be the end of it. And so here we are, standing on the front line, presenting the Messiah of Israel, the Savior of the world. And it may sting whoever feels sting, but it's Jesus Christ, the King of glory. And so now, the Christianism wants to stop halfway through. And well, Ismael is right. He was born first. He was born according to the flesh. He has the genealogy according to the flesh. He's right when he mocks, because it was written by Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. Is this camera working? Okay, so we say hello in this camera too. I'm just used to this way because during the week I'm always this way, so now I'll just be that way. So in the book of Ecclesiastes, this Bible doesn't have it. Oh no, yeah, it does have it. Chapter 10 in the book of Ecclesiastes, in the verse 7, it says, I have seen slaves on horseback, while princes go on foot like slaves. Princes, like the children of the king, are on foot, and slaves on horseback, the inequalities of life. The book of Hebrews says that the Lord of the house is the king, and the name of the king is Jesus. You can say it in Hebrew if you want, Joshua, or you can say it in English, Jesus. It's not higher if you say it in Hebrew. It's Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth. He is the king, and the children of the king are princes, according to the law of the kingdom. And Jesus said, for those who are victorious, I will be their God, and they will be my children. My children, that means sons of Jesus. That means prince of the kingdom. But the princes are in sin, in the desert of sin, in the desert of scarcity, of shortage, and the sons of the slave are on horseback. They are in opulence, And so, as long as the dollar bill says in God we trust, but I can see that right next to where it says in God we trust, but I'm not sure if they meant God. It's more like if it said gold. In the gold we trust. And while the children of God are still in sin, in Sinai, just turning in circles on scarcity, biting one another, and and sowing sparsely and reaping sparsely. And so that's why. That's why Judaism says to Christianism, you can be the B'nai Noah. You can be sons of Noah. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, rabbis. I'm not I'm not going to say anything related to the last word that I said. It comes to me, but I'm not saying it. Because if he that does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man. And so now you can see why that woman has the moon under her feet. And she's dressed with the luminary of the day, dressed with the sun. Of course, that's it. Like children of the light, children of light, from the kingdom of the light, not of the darkness which was first. We studied it a lot last week, and so let's take another spoonful of it. First is the Eden of earth, and then the Eden of heaven. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Both things, just like He did with the waters from above and the waters from under. Both things, just like He did with the oceans and the earth. Both things, just like He did with men and women. Not one, but two, to be able to reach unity. But if you only take half of something with half of the other, we're not doing anything. If you exclude the woman from the ministry, for example, then we're only going to work with men, so that would be working only with the 50%. Like when I told you the story about Brother Eric's van, that he had a Triptonic box, but he didn't know, so he was just going using half the power, 50%. It's like reaching the Feast of Pentecost, the Feast of the Weeks, 50%. And you're saying, oh, okay, we reached the fullness of the Spirit, and that's where the party starts. That's where the real trip begins. That's where the real ascending begins. Pentecost is just two steps. The disciples were with Jesus in the Passover, and he said to them, stay there in Jerusalem, in a little mount that is called the upper chamber. And that was equivalent to the local Sinai. That was the heights, because before the heights were looked for, it could be for looking for the God of Israel or any of the gods of the pagan people. That was always done in the mounts. You would have to go up and make an altar to whichever god it was, always in the high places. You could see the barbarities that were done by Solomon after he was old, establishing altars and places of worship in the high places. It was in the high places. People never looked for worshiping their gods or other people's gods in a whole. They would look for the high places. Like they used to say, it would be closer to the stars. That's what they said of Bogota, 2,600 meters closer to the stars. But no, the vision, even though they are on a high mount, the vision is blurry, it's cloudy, because the nature itself, so we have to quote again Romans, God's invisible qualities have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, So our planet Earth has a veil, which is the atmosphere. So if we wanted to see the stars, and what did the men do? Well, telescope. And then telescope in the high grounds. Palomar Mountain, for example, in the United States. But after they had the Hubble and now we have Webb, the telescopes are outside, on the other side of the veil. And there you can see clearly. From this side, you can only see shadows. Everything is blurry. From this side of the veil, it's just religion. From the other side of the veil is spirituality. And so, if you stick to the first 50, it's just ritual. There's lavatory and imposition of hands. It's water and oil. They're just figures. They're just figures, shadows, typologies, allegories, like these two women. They're two mounts. But for you to be able to see with unveiled faces, you need to transcend, you need to go up. Do you remember when God said to Abraham, Lef leha, leave, leave your land, leave your people, leave your household, so that you can see up. You can count the stars, but if you're inside the tent, you can't count. What does being in the tent mean? It means your dwelling, your experience. You need to transcend, you need to leave. You need to leave that condition going round and round your sin. The name of the desert, sin, sin. But because you think you have Sinai, and God is there, and there's the mount, and there's the sound of trumpet, and it's glorious. Well, yes, very glorious. Very glorious until you die. No. No, no, these are very different things. They are two very different things. They are two covenants, and they are both very different. One of them gives children for slavery, and the other one for freedom. And you and me, we were called for liberty, for freedom. And so, do you want to be under the law still? After all we've been through, all of the things we've lived, neither the man without the woman, nor the woman without the man, nor the earth without the heaven. For your kingdom come, and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Here on earth as it is in heaven. For God's will to be done. On the earth, Adama, the man was taken from the earth. And so Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Hey, Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Hey, Adama, Aleph, number 1, Dalet, number 4. We'll add those up, 1 and 4. I don't have the calculator here, but you can help me. 1 and 4. Mem, remember, Moshe, Moshiach, Majin, number 40. 1, 4, 40. And Hey, Jod Hey, Bad Hey, remember? Number 5. 1 plus 4, it's 5. Plus 40, 45. Plus 5 is 50. So it's 50. Pentecost, Adama, the earth. We're just missing the other half, because God created heavens and earth, and His will is done in heaven and on earth. And God has an Israel in heaven and on earth. It's complete. We're not going to stop at 50 and to say, no, I already have the Holy Spirit. And that's 50. And the rest? Do you get me? And so, the other half, Shemain, the heavens.
Shemaim,
And the
los
heavens,
cielos.
not heaven,
Y los
because there are the
cielos, no el
heavens and
cielo,
even
sino
the
los cielos,
highest
porque hay
heaven.
los cielos
In
y los
Greek
cielos
is
de los cielos,
Uranus
en griego Uranos,
and
Epouranos,
Eporanos. Over the heavens, that's where his glory
sobre los
is.
cielos, su gloria es.
And so
Entonces,
the path of
el
life
camino de
leads
la vida del
upward for the
entendido es
prudent,
hacia arriba,
to separate
hacia
from the
arriba,
valley,
para apartarse
from Sheol,
del,
hell,
del valle,
the place of
del
dead.
Seol, del lugar de los muertos.
Moshe, Moses,
Moshe,
Mem,
Moisés,
the man of the 40,
Mem, el
40,
hombre de
40,
40, 40, 40,
120 years of
120 años de
age,
edad,
40 in
40 en
Egypt,
Egipto,
40 in the
40
desert,
en el
with
desierto,
his wife, with Sephora,
pues
with Jethro,
en Madián,
with his livestock, well,
con su
in the
mujer,
desert.
con Séfora,
And
con
then
Jetro, con sus
there was the
ganados, bueno,
40 years
40 años
with
en el
Israel,
desierto, después 40
and
años
were
con
the
Israel,
other people that also came out
y bueno,
with
y los
them.
otros pueblos que
And so
salieron.
Moses speaks about
Entonces,
40.
Moisés
And he
nos habla de
arrives to
40
Sinai and
y
he
llega a
receives
Sinaí y
10
recibe
words or
10
10
palabras o
commandments.
10
Moses
mandamientos.
plus the 2 tablets,
Moisés con las dos
that would be
tablas nos
50.
suma 50.
Again,
Lo
it's the
mismo
same,
otra vez.
50.
50,
We would
o sea,
still be missing
falta
half.
la otra mitad.
That's
Eso
the
es lo
terrenal
terrenal
part.
y lo celestial.
And the
Hasta ahí
celestial,
estamos en
until
Agar,
that
hasta ahí
moment,
estamos en Sinaí,
we
hasta ahí
are
estamos
in
en Arabia,
Agar, we are
hasta
in
ahí estamos
Sinai,
en la
we
mitad.
are in Arabia, we're right
¿Y
in the
dónde está
middle,
Sara?
we are halfway. And where
Que
is
significa
Sarah?
princesa.
That means princess. Yes,
Sí,
that's right,
entonces,
as the
como hija
daughter
del
of
rey,
the king, like you
como tú,
and like me.
yo también.
You see,
La historia
the
no
story
termina
doesn't
ahí en
end
Agar.
there in Agar.
El
The
verdadero
true firstborn of
primogénito
Abraham is Ishmael.
de Abraham es Ismael.
Esau is firstborn over
Esaú es
Jacob.
primogénito sobre
Cain
Jacob.
is firstborn over Abel
Caín es primogénito sobre Abel
or over Set. But
o sobre
first
Set.
is the animal. First is
Pero
the
es que
terrenal.
primero es
How
lo
many
animal,
times
primero es lo terrenal.
will they insist
¿Cuántas
over the
veces
same thing
insistir sobre lo
until we
mismo
can
hasta que se entienda?
understand? And so 40
Entonces,
plus 10,
40 más
50.
10, 50.
Tell me, you who want to be under the 50,
Decidme los que queréis
the
estar
law. And
bajo el
if you're
50,
through
no
the
habéis oído
new
la ley.
road and you stop in
Y si van en el
Pentecost,
camino
you
nuevo
stopped
y
in the
paran
50,
en Pentecostés,
that's what's equivalent.
pararon en el 50,
So we need to
en la
go
equivalencia.
forward to perfection.
Vamos adelante
We're
a la
going to
perfección.
Sukkot. We're
Vamos
going
a
to the
Sukkot.
plenitude, to the
Vamos
third
a la
experience.
plenitud, vamos
Don't
a la
stop.
tercera experiencia.
We talked
No
about
te
it a
detengas.
few weeks
Lo
ago.
trabajamos hace unas semanas
Don't
atrás.
stop.
No te detengas.
Lev leha. Leave from there.
Sal
We're
de
going
ahí.
to break that
Vamos a
fence
romper ese cerco
of scarcity.
de escasez.
There are a few things
Se
that are needed.
necesitan pocas cosas.
What is it that we need?
¿Qué necesitamos?
Your decision.
Tu
Your
decisión.
decision. If the
Tu
person
decisión.
continues doing the
Si la
same,
persona sigue haciendo
then
lo
the same
mismo,
things will
va a
happen.
suceder lo
We
mismo.
must make
Hay que hacer un
changes.
cambio.
You
Hay
need
que
to
dar un
take a
paso, hay
step.
que dar
You
pasos,
need to
no
take
uno.
steps.
Me
Not a
corrijo,
step.
pasos
I'll correct myself.
radicales
Steps.
que cambien
Radical steps
tu
that will
rutina,
change
tu
your
manera de
routine,
pensar,
the
tu
way you
manera de
think, the
proceder
way
para
you
que le
proceed,
abramos
so that you can open
la
the door.
puerta.
Here I
He
am
aquí,
at
yo
the
estoy a la
door.
puerta,
He's
no
not
está
far
lejos,
away.
está a la puerta.
He's at the door.
Pero si
If
oyes
anyone
la voz y
hears the
abres la
voice
puerta,
and
si la
opens the
abres,
door, if you open the door,
abres un
then
compás
you
para que
open for the
intervenga la operación del
intervention
Espíritu,
of the
entonces
Spirit,
sucederán
and so
cosas.
things
Pero
will
si tú
happen.
repites lo
But
mismo,
if you repeat
estás
the same
cerrado,
things,
estás
you're
en una ciudad
closing,
amurallada,
you're
en
in a
sin,
fortress, you're in
encerrado
sin,
en tu propia
enclosed
escasez,
in
en tu
your own
propia carencia, en tu
scarcity,
propio
in your
desierto,
own
en tu
shortage,
propio
in your own
Sinaí,
desert, in your own
haciendo
Sinai,
buenas
doing
obras.
good things.
Sí,
Yes, I'm not saying you're
no
going to
estoy
be
diciendo
condemned, and
que habría
surely your faith
condenación,
is in Jesus
seguramente
and
tu
all of
fe
those
está en
things.
Jesús,
I
todas
just want
estas
you to
cosas.
have an experience
Quiero es que
in this
tengas
life.
una
I'm not
experiencia
erasing
en
you
esta
from the book
vida.
of life or
No te estoy
anything like that,
borrando
or
del
taking
libro de la
away
vida,
the
ni mucho
glory that
menos,
is
ni
coming,
quitando
so
la
that you
gloria
can be the
venidera,
witness and you
para que
can
puedas ser
witness and
testigo
say it
aquí,
is
puedas
true.
atestiguar
It's
y
not
decir,
the hope of
ciertamente
glory, it's
es
the
cierto.
glory that is going to
No era
manifest
una
in
esperanza de
us.
gloria, sino
That's what the
gloria
Apostle
que se han de
Peter says.
manifestar en
To be
nosotros, nos dice el
participants
apóstol
of
Pedro, ser
divine
participantes
glory
de la
of that
naturaleza
nature,
divina,
here
aquí
and
y
now.
ahora.
Let your
Venga
kingdom
tu reino,
come.
venga
Let
tu
your
reino
kingdom
para que
come
se haga
so that
tu
it will
voluntad
be made
aquí en
here
la
on
tierra. Esto es
earth.
lo que dice
That's
la
what the
oración
most popular
más
prayer for
popular de
humanity
la humanidad,
says,
que es el
which is
Padre
the
nuestro,
Our Father.
para que
Your
se haga tu
will be
voluntad
done here
aquí
on
en
earth.
la tierra. ¿Y cuál es
And
tu
which
voluntad?
is your will?
Amado, deseo que seas
Beloved, I
prosperado en
pray that you
todo.
may
Esa
prosper
es la
in all
voluntad.
things. That is His will.
¿En
And
las manos de
whose
quién está?
hands is that on?
Digamos la
Let's say the
verdad,
truth.
señores.
We can say, Dear Lord,
Dice,
it's
Señor,
in
esto
your
está en tus
hands.
manos.
But
No,
no,
está
it's
en las
in your
tuyas.
hands.
Está en las
It's
tuyas.
your
Es tu
decision,
decisión.
which can open or
La que puede
close.
abrir o
Behold,
cerrar.
I set before
He aquí
you
que
the
pongo
way of
delante de
life
vosotros
and the
camino
way
de
of
vida,
death.
camino de muerte.
Choose the way of life.
Escoge el camino de vida.
And there it is.
Ahí está.
Last week, I
Semana
talked
pasada
too long,
hablé
and I have
muy largo.
to
Tengo que
move the waters, but not get too carried
agitar las
on
aguas,
to the point that this
pero
clock that you see here
no
during the week that I always
emocionarme
have
al
in front
punto
of
de
me
que
will
el reloj
take a
que
very
ustedes
long
ven
time. And
entre
right now
semana,
it's
ahora lo
32
estoy viendo
minutes
aquí enfrente mío, se vaya
and
mucho tiempo.
24
Están
seconds.
32 minutos, 24
And
segundos.
so we have
Entonces,
closed the
la
idea.
idea la hemos cerrado.
Do you want to adore a goddess
¿Quieres
of
adorar una
the
diosa
Sumerians?
de los sumerios?
It doesn't matter the name
No
that you
importa
give
qué nombre le
it,
pongas,
but
pero
do you
quieres
still
seguir
want to be
ahí
there?
apegado
Stuck
al
to the
pacto
pact of Sinai?
de Sinaí.
Do you want to have the capital of your
¿Quieres tener
kingdom
la
in the
capital
Jerusalem
de
made
tu
of
reino
stone
en Jerusalén,
and sand?
de piedra, tierra y
Citizens of
arena?
the celestial motherland,
¿O quieres ser
because our
ciudadano
citizenship
de la patria
is in the
celestial?
heavens. And
Porque
so we
nuestra
would be
ciudadanía
fellow citizens
está en los
with the
cielos.
saints who have as their capital a Jerusalem
Ahí
of
seríamos
gold,
conciudadanos de los
not of
santos
sand
que tienen
or of
por
rock,
capital una Jerusalén
where
de
the
oro,
ordinances
no de tierra,
and the
ni de piedra,
commandments,
en donde las ordenanzas,
where the
los mandatos,
commandments are
los
made
mitzvot, los
flesh,
mandamientos
they are
están
not
hechos
written
carne, no
in
están
a
escritos
cuneiform way
de manera
on rock,
cuneiforme
so that when
sobre
someone gets
piedras,
angry, he'll
que
throw
cuando
them on
alguien
the
se ponga
floor
bravo
and they'll
les tire al
break.
piso y se partan
No,
para siempre,
they are forever,
porque
because they are
son
rocks
piedras vivas,
alive. And not
y no
only
solo
that they are
vivas,
alive,
sino
but they have
también
an
eternas.
eternal life. And so the
Entonces,
decision is not in the
la
hands of
decisión no
God.
está en las manos de
Dear
Dios.
Lord,
Señor,
when will you finally
¿cuándo
decide
vas a
that I will
decidir
come
por
out
fin de
of
que
this condition?
yo salga de esta condición?
No,
No.
it
Es
is for you to
guarda
stay
silencio
quiet
en este momento que estamos
during this
hablando y
moment
oye
that
la
we are
oración de
praying
Dios.
and
Todas
listen
las
to
semanas
God's prayer.
oímos
Every week,
las
we
oraciones
hear the
de
prayer
santos y
of
santas de
saints
Dios
of
en todos
God
los lugares
everywhere
para que
so that they
suban al
would go
cielo.
up to heaven.
Hoy
But today, stay
guarda
quiet
silencio y
and
escucha
listen
que
to God
Dios
saying, He's
es
saying to us
quien
and to
está
you,
diciendo,
it's your
nos está
decision.
diciendo, te está diciendo,
I am here
tu decisión.
waiting
Yo
for
estoy
your
esperando por
decision.
tu decisión.
Break the fence.
Rompe el cerco.
Leave. Lev
Sal.
leha. Leave
Lev
from
leha.
your tent. Leave from
Sal
your
de tu
land.
tienda.
Leave
Sal de
your
tu
terrenal
tierra, trasciende tu
condition.
condición terrenal.
Leave.
Supera
Overcome that
esa condición que
condition
parece que fuera
that seems like
una
if it
cadena de
were
esclavitud,
a
un yugo.
chain of
No puedes
slavery.
superar
a
tus
yoke.
propios vicios, tus
You
propias
can't
limitaciones,
overcome
tu
your own
temperamento
vices, your
incontrolable.
own
Rómpelo,
limitations,
sujétalo,
your uncontrollable
rómpelo
temper.
en servidumbre.
Break it,
Mayor
restrain
es
it, put
el
it
que
in
se gobierna a sí
bondage.
mismo
He
con
who
ti.
governs himself
Lo
is
hace
bigger
sobre
than
una
he who
gran
does it
ciudad.
with a big city. Listen to the prayer.
Oye la oración,
Listen to
oye
the
la
petition
petición
of God
de
for
Dios
your
para
life.
tu vida.
Listen to what God
Oye lo que
wants for
Dios
you.
quiere para ti.
Listen to Him.
Escúchalo. Gracias, Padre. Amén.
Entre tanta tristeza